So great. Thanks a lot for being here, guys, and thanks for taking the time out, Munly. With all your plethora of experience in terms of having worked remotely for over a decade now, I mean, this is going to be extremely valuable for all the people
Yeah.
who have been forced to work remote now, with and with not really a bright side of the future of work that we are facing at this point in time. But sure, this is going to be a transitory thing. But as a matter of fact, we as we come out of this onto the other side, there would be a lot of things that would have changed, which would also include a lot of acceptance for remote work. So thanks for being here, Munly. I mean, I would be very keen to understand what your background has been, and what are the kind of things that you have done. If you could just tell it for our listeners, and we can just get rolling on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background has been in the gaming industry, C++ and C Sharp, like .NET type stuff. And the thing is, I haven't actually worked as a developer straight through. So when I moved away from the West and I came out to Southeast Asia, I took the opportunity because we need less money out here to actually build formal marketing experience. So I ran a bunch of multi-million dollar like ICO campaigns, like successful ones. I built an e-commerce store that I didn't fully scale, and I'm kind of regretting it at the moment. So at this point, well, actually, I think like since a few years ago, I started calling myself a hacker hustler. And I think like in the startup world, people like to say like people that can do both are rare, but people who can be hacker, hustler, and hipster are even rarer, like super rare. So I'm not that rare. I'm not that special.
Uh, but what exactly is hacker hustler? If you can just help us understand that as well.
It just means someone who can do the tech stuff, who can code, and also do the selling and the business side.
That's pretty cool, though. Yeah.
Yep.
Great. So how did you venture exactly into like working remote, and when was this journey started? If you can dive into that.
You know what? I gotta remember how I even started. So I know I wanted to work remotely, like because it was always possible if when you were a programmer, like when you're collaborating on game projects or whatever together. Like it's not often a problem with technical ability to do so. A lot of it is based on security. Like in AAA game industry or Hollywood film work or whatever, of course you can work on that stuff remotely, but the problem becomes security.
Mm-hmm.
Like a security of safeguarding the shots or the critical assets or whatever, because fanboys are looking for leaks and, hot news or whatever. You don't want the stuff getting out before release. That's really the real problem. Even the way Hollywood when they farm the visual effects shots out now. By the way, I also have some film and visual effects background. They actually load the hard drives and the data in suitcases, and they take them over on planes.
Oh wow!
When they have different studios work on them in different countries, like this for security purposes, and this is all expensed out.
Damn, that must be harsh.
Yeah, and in the case of Australia, they'll say like, because the internet there is so bad there that it's actually cheaper and faster to send it on a plane than it is to use the internet. Yeah, so I mean, I guess like when I started, it was after the game industry actually, because I couldn't actually convince them to let them work remotely, even though I live in an apartment roughly around 20 minutes away from the office. So there was a lot of sleep in the office and crunch, and so the only time when I actually was able to go work remotely was when I left the industry and I started doing web design. Like most game programmers, when you sort of like burn out or you feel like you're done, you go and fail and die in the web design. You feel that's where you have to go to die. And then I just realized I really didn't enjoy the company of web developers. They're very boring and hipstery type people. And then I struck out on my own, and then I took away some of the smaller clients to start off, and then and I just made it remote from that point onwards, and I never stopped. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And how long back was that?
Well, it wasn't over a decade, but I think we're coming up close to it now, like around 2010. Cool. Yeah.
That's nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And right now, what are the kind of things that you're engaged in? You're working with a co-founder that sits in the US. So you can walk us through some of the stuff you're doing.
Yeah, this is what I want to reach out to listeners on, because I'm working on a startup right now that hasn't been fully launched or fully announced. But we're onboarding customers. We're post revenue. It's kind of weird. We probably should announce now, but it's called Balance Gaming Network, right?
Hmm.
That's www.balancegaming.network. And what we're really looking for are like kind of like higher value people like yourself, like knowledge workers or whatever, who are also gamers and aren't giving it up. Right, it becomes a case of struggling to balance your good career or your good life with the gaming. So if you're like in that category, which I think a lot of people are, like usually maybe like 22 onwards, with your at least with at your first job,
Hmm.
um, yeah, these are the specific kinds of gamers that we want. So in the future, in the future, let's say that Calm Work has a you have your little group of gamers from Calm Work. I would like to have company or corporate style gaming events where we could have like Calm Work versus Basecamp or something, Basecamp's gamers or something, and with
Oh,
no one expected to be pro gamers or anything. It's just like this is a way to have fun and also connect, find some mutual professional or even hobbyist related connections. So in the case where you don't really have a good job, like you're doing a survival job, but you actually do have interesting hobbies like robotics or machine learning or something like this. In our case, we would want you to talk about who you are as a hobbyist, not
mhm.
your survival job. Right?
That's
Yeah.
that's for sure. That's for sure. But that's a very interesting space to be in because with a lot of movement restriction with the COVID-19, right? I mean, that's certainly one of the spaces that is gonna shoot past. So kudos to be in there at this point in time.
Yeah. Mhm.
Hey, so coming back to the topic of, I mean, your exposure with remote working, right? And one of these questions that keeps coming up multiple times, that a lot of people, while they're actually working remote, right, there's a sense of motivation that tends to go away, right? Because you're not seeing your colleagues every time, you're not around them, and especially in these kind of setups where the systems are not even set up for remote work, but
Mhm.
everybody has been forced to suddenly shift gears to be working remote,
Yeah.
and that too working from home. So I mean, I'm sure you would have had some bouts where you would have felt similar things. How did you cope with those, and what is it that you actually think one should do to keep themselves motivated and
I'm
on
gonna
the right
yeah,
track?
I'm gonna give you a very untraditional answer compared to what most people will say, actually.
Hmm.
So like motivation has never really been a problem for me because I'm very objective focused. So it's just a case of this is the task, this is how much time we have, what are the steps, and so on. But what actually kills my motivation is Slack. Slack is probably, I think it's the worst remote work tool ever, especially if you have to log in every day. And it is what you see every single day. It's basically like a worse version of IRC because it's so standardized. Because in the old days in IRC, we had bots. We had a lot of ways to have fun in a nerdy way. Slack takes it, sanitizes all of it, and makes it very just corporate and user friendly. And I really don't recommend Slack at all. Like the thing is, I'm in a unique situation where in Chiang Mai, we're like a city of remote workers.
Uh-huh.
So remote workers are always easily find other people to hang out with or co-work with, or like most people don't have this. So I have to put myself in the mindset where if you don't have this environment where you're naturally surrounded by this supportive environment with lots of meetups and whatever, and it's really just normal, right? Like I find that in terms of motivation, um, you need to be mission focused. And if you're not mission focused, you have to find a way to become mission focused. But you have to add, in terms of your happiness and your life and everything else, you have to add to that outside of work, really.
Hmm.
There's another group that I advertised in called Coronavirus Working from Home. And, the person who found that is like the opposite of me. They're more like touchy feely, and so they have these motivational routines and whatever, they're the kinds of people that actually like use motivational posters and that sort of thing. I guess that could have helped. It really depends on personality type. I would say like don't listen to someone like me and feel like you have to be like me. Try to know yourself and and do what works for you, because everyone really is different. But just make sure that you set the time to be reflective and find that out, you know if you feel like you're being forced into being someone that you're not, because maybe the rest of the team, is right. I've seen that happen before, and I just say like it's never worked out. You'll burn yourself out. Yeah.
And that's a very profound thing coming from you. So basically, if people can be like really active into understanding who they actually are and what works for them, that's phenomenal. But I'm sure you would have also handled people while you were working with them, wherein you would have sort of gotten some work delivered, and you might have seen some dip in motivation. How did you tackle that at those points in time?
Yeah, it's happened. It's happened to me, but I wouldn't say I myself have tackled it very well because I've also been in management positions, and I'll be honest. Like whenever I was in this position, I complained half the time, and then the other half the time I did their jobs for them,
Mm-hmm.
literally. As in I ended up working 24 hours to cover their jobs. Um, and not everyone has the skill set to do so. So the only way I've really managed around that is at least double the time for every task, and just make sure you have enough slack to manage this, and make sure the lines of communication are open, truly open. When someone can honestly say, you know what, I just didn't do any work today. I was watching Netflix all day. I just wasn't motivated, because we have to be honest. This stuff happens. Sometimes you're crazy productive, and other times you're not. Like the 2 hours before this today, I knew myself enough to know that if I did something that was real work, I would most likely miss the deadline up for this, and like disappoint you and let you down. So I just kept myself relatively open, only just checked emails, that sort of thing, and just made sure that I was on time for this. Right? I was
Yeah.
open with everyone. I told everyone, hey, tomorrow I got this webinar tomorrow. Probably a couple of hours beforehand. Don't expect me to do any real work because I don't want to let them down. Yeah.
uh, that's really nice of you to not let us down and share this bits of wisdom. But at the same time, like you were mentioning about being super communicative about stuff, and which is some of the things that we have noticed that calm work. It, I mean, the more communicative you are, it tends to work out much better for you, right? What has
Yeah.
been your experience in terms of communication? How to be more communicative, and what exactly is striking the right balance?
So this is the main piece of advice I give everyone that talks to me about remote work. Like you need to have a culture of remote work. Like you're going to ask me about tools later, but tools are really not important. The most important thing is the communications culture you set. Either you communicate everything in your Slack or your Discord or whatever, or you don't. Like if you have an office culture and you have like a remote thing and you try to mix them, what nearly always happens is that some things will be said in one or the other, and people will miss things, and then people will feel like they're left out or they're not valuable. Even if you do have an office, if you have any kind of remote workforce at all, you need to set a standard where even if you're in the office, you guys are still sitting there on Slack, and
Mhm.
everything has to go through Slack. No one gets left out. No one gets left behind. I did see on your thread, you talked about over communication or whatever. That's kind of important, but what I just said, I think is more important. Like where you communicate, right, and your standards of communication are more important than how you communicate. Yeah.
That's interesting. And like you were mentioning about some of the tools that you would have experienced, and any one communication tool that you want to vouch for? Of course, yes.
Okay. Well, I just complained about Slack, right? So,
Yeah.
it's not just because I'm a gamer, but I really recommend Discord for two reasons. The biggest reason is, on Slack and Skype or whatever, if you want to call anyone, you actually have to make a physical call. You literally just can't go into a room like when you guys are already on Slack and just start talking. So that's the best thing about Discord. You can just conference really quickly, informally, no calls, whatever. If you need to make private calls, it's all in there as well. And for Discord, you have like they have really good tech where basically their web version of it and the desktop client are literally identical. I think that it's all coded under the same web framework. And let me see if I can screen share this now. Present now. Yeah. So for those who have never used Discord, this is the actual Discord for my startup. I mean, it's not the work Discord; it's the actual where you come to play games Discord. But very easily, I mean, like I've used this as a Slack
Uh,
substitute as well. You see
Manli,
how we've
do
got
you want
game
to
room?
share that? I mean,
Oh,
we can't access that yet.
uh, okay. Oh yeah, I gotta click the screen. Mhm. All right. All right. So yeah, so you can see it looks very similar to Slack.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't know. I mean, this doesn't make me get bored and go crazy like Slack, and it doesn't for other gamers too. I don't. Maybe it's because the UI is black. I don't know. But you see, you've got these voice channels, and you can have okay, so you can have text channels, whatever. And the other thing I like about Discord, while I remember, is if you're in multiple Slacks, like you have to log out, you have to log into that Slack, and so on. Like in Discord, they have these different hubs, and you don't have to log out of everything. You see how quickly it is to change. Like if you're
Uh,
multiple Slacks or multiple companies.
you know what? These are called workspaces in Slack, and like about a few months back, Slack also integrated these, so we can just start
Okay.
with multiple workspaces as well there as well.
Yeah, I guess they've been forced to catch up to Discord, but I don't know about the voice functionality.
Uh-huh.
That's the other reason I use it. But anyway, the weakness of Discord was it wasn't really set up for corporate use, so there's not really a lot of strong security features. So that's the other thing. Yeah, you have to
Mm.
sort of balance that out. Maybe have one for like unofficial company collaboration. You have one for more like official security sensitive stuff. No. Yeah. Then you maybe stay on Slack. Yep.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yep.
Uh, and another thing, actually, I wanted to jump to the fact that you were talking about tools. So, are there other collaborating tools as well that you think we should keep in mind while we are making this transition?
Yeah. So I'm gonna share again. All right. I think hopefully a lot of people have heard of Basecamp by now, right? It was the first ever like remote project management software, and then there were platforms, and then there was a bunch of like wannabes. And Teamwork, this one I have up here, is my favorite wannabe. It's basically a much more powerful version of Basecamp. The only reason why I don't log into it right now is because the last time I had a project on it was quite a while ago. We're setting up a new one, but we haven't quite done it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that email's dead. But anyway, yeah, check this out. So the biggest thing that I like to recommend about Teamwork is that they have a free tier that you never lose. So essentially, like if your company or whatever shuts down, right, you can always drop down to a free tier. Like I could, if I started the old email, I could probably still log in, and that repo will still be there. Right, Basecamp doesn't do that. So like a lot of people,
Oh, yeah.
Basecamp obviously it's better for Basecamp's business model for people to keep paying for repos that they no longer use anymore, just to keep them around. But yeah, so Teamwork always has this free tier, and on top of that is it's just more powerful in every way. Yeah. Okay. And so the other thing that I like, getting quite common, Trello.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a fan of things like TweetDeck and so on. Yeah. So this is Epic Games, the Epic Game Store. Their own internal Trello, which they've recently made public on everything that they haven't gotten done forever, which just seems like some of these things relatively simple, like achievements and currencies aren't that simple, but yeah, things like reviews, wish lists. You would think like this is just crud app functionality, and they have $1 billion, and they make the most powerful game engine on the planet. Why is it so hard? But apparently it is. Yeah.
But yeah, Trello is pretty cool though. I mean, and it also helps you. I mean, in terms of tracking, like, you can sync it with your phone, and a bunch of stuff can happen around that as well.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you guys might have better tools than cooler tools that are less known than I do. But this is why it's not the hard part. All it takes is just knowing someone. They'll tell you what tool it is. You'll go check it out. You'll be like, okay, I'll adopt this. Done.
I mean, I'm
The
sure.
costly part is the harder part. Yeah, discipline.
Yep. And I'm sure there's some of us who would already check out Discord primarily because the kind of voice channels that it has, and that certainly is a lot more helpful and makes things move faster. Because when you're trying to explain stuff over text messages, voice clearly trumps that. So that certainly is the case. One more thing that you were just mentioning about the difficult part is the discipline part, and I'll want to come to that specific aspect of when you're working from home, right? When you're working in an office, I mean, you see people around you, you see that they're all with their headphones wired, they're all typing something or the other and working on their own. You get somewhat motivated, but while you're back at home, there's many a times, and especially while you're working from home per se, there's many times that there's going to be family around, there's going to be people who will be coming and prodding on you, what's up and how are things going. So I mean, what are some of the hygiene things that you would recommend in terms of setting it up so that you can be more productive even while you're working from home, despite the fact that the same environment cannot be emulated while at home?
Okay, so there's kind of three separate questions in one question, right? Okay, so the first thing that I found that people do when they have family or whatever, right? Like they set aside a separate room that's an office, so like their family can see that when you go in there, right? And better if you have a door you can close, you're in work mode. They need to like understand that this is real work. Okay, and if you don't have that separate space that you can basically like make a home cubicle with a curtain or something like that. I've seen people do that, right? The second thing is, I guess, like motivation, like keeping people working. You know, like you have to be physically supervised. I not just me, but most Western remote companies, we have a different philosophy around that. Like, if you basically can't trust the people to be motivated and experienced enough to just work, like, you know, to be on task or whatever, you shouldn't be hiring them at all. Like if they're gonna need external management, they don't get the job, right? Like that's how we deal with it. Because the best remote workers basically don't have this problem. You know, it's work. You're adults, you're grown ups. The third thing about hygiene, honestly, in a town like Chiang Mai, no one's figured it out. There are people that have really, really bad hygiene. We have certain people we talk about here, and I haven't heard myself talked about, but I don't shower as much as I have to. So just put me in the fail category, possibly. Like right now, you know, there are no barbers open, and like I need a haircut, and I actually do get haircuts regularly, unlike a lot of people here. And I'm like, we can't get a haircut under lockdown right now. Right?
That sure is the case. And but I'm sure there would have been some of the practices that you would have incorporated, like these are some things that I do that help me being more productive while at it. So if you can share some of those would be like really helpful for the group.
Um, well, okay, so my own thing is like I I'm basically I can have a fun personality, but I'm not having a lot of fun because I'm basically I'm giving myself over to work a lot in terms of time management. There is something called like the Pomodoro technique, you know, where like you time yourself 5 minutes. Like, you know, I don't employ it. I would just encourage people to Google it, Pomodoro or Pomodori. It tends, because it's very niche. It's sort of like it seems to be developed by developers, and it seems to be solving developer specific problem. I.e., like you don't sort of like spend too much time on Hacker News or spend too much time on one problem. You know, like, you know, it's like every 5-10 minutes, you know, just a reminder. These 10 minutes have passed. That could be useful, but it depends on the kind of work as well, because I'm kind of like a deep thinker, you know, like to get engrossed in a problem, and that is my zone. Some people, you know, they can't prioritize and they get too easily in the weeds or focusing on the non-mission critical parts of a project. It differs per person, but yeah, there are a bunch of different techniques. But again, it comes to the most important one. I think it seems to be for me that I recommend is know yourself first. Yeah.
Uh-huh. I mean, I can't stress more on that fact about self-awareness, right? And it's extremely critical in terms of defining any kind of work format, but more so important when it comes to remote work, right? So because that's the time when you're not actually doing things out of accountability because people are around you and stuff like that, but that's actually some of those times when you are going to do exactly things as you would have done when you were alone, and that's when your real character starts showing up as well. And it's at those points in time when you're high being high on self-awareness is certainly going to help, especially in terms of planning the rest of the stuff that you want to deliver, and also the kind of things that would align you better with the work. So that's certainly helpful. Mali, one another thing, while we're talking a lot about being self-aware, there's one thing, like when you go to an office or some outside place, right? So there's multiple times that you tap onto another coworker, another colleague from different team, and you have some conversation, so you get a sense of community and belongingness while you're at work, right? uh, a lot of those things that we tend to tackle here at Calm Work is primarily via the community of Calm Force that we are building, wherein everybody works remotely on their own, but at the same time, they also have access to each other, where they can talk about similar kind of stuff. They can know each other and have that sense of connectedness. I mean, what have been your kind of ways to tackle that? I mean, I'm sure you would have come across it multiple times in your life as well.
Yeah, so there's a sort of two different scenarios I can give this under. Like I said, in a place like Chiang Mai, like we're literally living proof that this can work, because we're surrounded by a community that also meets up in person. Even though we're all remote workers, we maybe work for different companies or whatever. Now, when you don't have this, when I've had this in the past, and I guess maybe this is why I didn't click with web developers. In like I don't look like it, but I'm turning 40 this year. Like in my nerd generation, we all kind of had the same nerd hobbies. Like we liked the same TV shows, like Star Trek. We were all
Yeah.
generally like, you could almost assume everyone was a gamer. And I guess where it started disconnecting for me was like when the hipster generation started coming in. I was just like, nah, I don't get along with these people, right? So like it doesn't have to be around remote work. Like maybe there's something else that you guys bond on outside of the remote work, like sports or Bollywood or well, yeah, whatever. Like there's a bit of a trend in Silicon Valley when they have these retreats and they have these team building things. I find this is all kind of like bullshit, and a lot of remote workers, veteran ones, has said the same thing, because what companies should be spending on is things that take care of their employees, like good health insurance. Okay, good health insurance, flex time, things that relate to quality of life, not necessarily monetary. But beyond that, maybe having some kind of culture or even mission beyond just the actual work itself, I think keeps you together more so than maybe any other activity, I guess. Yeah, but I mean, like this I guess this question kind of relates why I didn't really click with the web developers, because I felt more of a culture clash with them, because they would get excited about just very different things. Between the designers get excited about fonts and kerning, and they would get excited about, I don't know, like veganism and yoga and hipster stuff, and I was like, nah. Yeah, you need to have a culture. Yeah, something. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, but you know what? So, Manli, what we're also experiencing is that we are at a point wherein a lot of different kind of generations and people are coming together in similar kind of works, right? And how
Yeah.
do we? There's a lot of differences in the kind of things that you might like, but at the same time, you also want to make it work because you are much more aligned to the larger thing, right? Uh,
Yeah.
when you're at these kind of crossroads, right, and especially like you're mentioning the web developer experience, and I'm sure there would be some other small things that would have happened as well. How do
Yeah.
you kind of align yourself back that, no, look, I'm here for the larger cause. Okay, I might not like three of these guys, but we'll make it work. And especially when you guys are working in a remote kind of setup, how do you kind of navigate through these kind of things? I mean, those are like extremely crucial. And given the COVID-19 situation, in the upcoming weeks, people are going to start feeling a lot more of those. So how did you ever tackle those kind of things?
Well, you know what? The bigger question slash answer is that I don't think most remote companies are spending any time on this at all. Like defining what it is, even like what it is they might want to do outside of remote work, or like the things that we're talking about. So the first step is actually like devote some time to it, like have some people talk about like who they are outside of their job, like what
Hmm.
kinds of things. So like I think it's not about who they are. Maybe you should start asking people how they spend their time. Are
Hmm.
you a dog person? Do you binge watch on Netflix? Like, do you play video games? Because like I guess what I'm saying is the life outside of work doesn't necessarily have to come from your colleagues. I
Sure.
mean, yeah, like that. I'm friends with a lot of people, other remote workers out here, whatever, and we've never worked together.
Hmm.
Like, our relationships are entirely based on Facebook, and maybe once or twice, we have crossed. We had the opportunity to do like a small project or whatever together, but I'm just guess what I'm saying is like you could have remote friends too, and that's actually what Balance Gaming Network could help with. We're just one avenue of having a social life outside of a social life that's possible remotely outside of remote work. Yeah, yeah. If you're in the gaming, you should definitely check us out because you guys are all like I guess like upwardly mobile professionals, and that is basically our core demographic. I'd like it to be anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good placement, and sure, we would take a look at that. But Manli, this has been a very interesting discussion around how some of us can learn faster with the things that you have been through. But this is one thing that I absolutely want to ask people, and which is probably which is going to be the closing question. What has been your biggest failure while you were attempting all of this, and how did you cope with that?
Attempting to work remotely.
Yep. Attempting to work remotely, setting things up, and all of that stuff. And the biggest failure, like which crumbled you, and how did you bounce back from there?
Let me think, because this deserves a good answer. Because there are answers like internet problems, right? Like Australia having worse internet than most of the planet, and like not having be able to video conference, like literally having an easier time video conferencing with American than someone in Australia. No, okay. So I think the biggest crumble stuff is when like you have someone that talks a good game, or you even have someone that has past successful remote work experience, but they let you down. They don't deliver. They don't deliver on time, or they just disappear. Like even the most experienced of us can literally just disappear. And then I think the hardest part is like anticipating this or being honest upfront enough with whatever it might cause you to disappear with your team ahead of time. Because like most people just cannot bring this up. It's not even, I'm not even going to go into the whole Asian culture, Asian Indian culture thing where where you tend to see the yes people to death, because even Westerners don't do it. Like a lot of people won't tell you
Mhm.
literally where it's like, look, you know what? Season 1 of Iron Fist just came out. I'm gonna spend the next day watching that through. I know once I start watching this, I'm not. I have to finish the whole thing.
Mhm.
Some of these things, right? Like it sounds silly, but again, bring it up because then your coworkers anticipate it. I'm setting that culture with Balance, where I'm gonna. Maybe this is a perk that I offer, where I'll say like it is okay to say that some game came out and you're really excited about it, and you're gonna spend the next few days or even a week playing it, and we'll try to accommodate that. We'll cover you. You can take the time off, right? Because it's only human. Other things that may be a bit more reasonable, like my mom is sick or whatever, my father needs taken care of for this, right? Like just be human, bring it up, and I think when you people start doing this, right, these are the real team building exercises. Because team building exercises are bullshit. You manufacture up something and you all like catch someone. No, how about we catch each other for real? How about we be real human beings? And I think once you start accommodating for this stuff, we'll not only have a more human remote work experience. I think we'll just have a more human remote. We'll have a more human work experience. Period. Right.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and I mean, especially in the last decade, there has been a lot of plethora around team building exercise in the name of culture. But what we
Yeah.
have realized is that a one-on-one conversation, I mean, there's no replacement to that. And if you can go deeper
Yeah.
into understanding, and this comes from a natural sense of curiosity. If you really want to understand the person, and that has voted the best relations for me until now, and that's really helpful. So thanks for answering that, Manle. There's just one question that I'm missing, which was asked to us earlier, and this question is around, job security, right? So, do you feel that remote work offers jobs that are more secure than in-office jobs, or do you feel it is otherwise? Or what's your take on that?
Um, okay, so probably the most helpful answer I'm going to give you in the whole session. In reality, I would say job security is a lot worse because I define job security by not how long you can have the job, but how easy it is for you to go get another one. How quickly, can it be? Reality is in this kind of, when the job is available remotely, the whole damn planet can apply for it. And I've talked to so many remote employers from like English teaching schools to the remote work crews. I forgot what it's called. Hacker Paradise, I think it is. Like there are literally at least 1,000 job applications for every one position.
Mm-hmm.
That is the reality. Like if you don't get a job, it's not because you sucked. It's because literally we don't have enough jobs, right? And so if you really want job security, you need to be on a team. You need to be one of these unique employer situations where they don't really want to grow any bigger, but they really do want to have the same people forever. They want to have a true family or whatever. And that's the only real job security. I mean, the approach that we have out here in Chiang Mai is a bit different because people don't really want jobs. That's why we came out to Chiang Mai. We want to lower our costs to make work essentially optional, right? So most people here will be entrepreneurial first, and they prefer to be working part-time or working on short projects that we want jobs that will end. So that's what I was talking to you about, before, right? Yeah, I don't want job security. I want the job to end.
No, but you raise a very valid point around that what job security essentially is like that's a myth in itself. It's a myth,
Kind of
right?
is.
So, yeah. So you basically, I mean, so long as you're performing good, it just works out well, and it happens all the
No, it
time.
doesn't always because stuff could be happening in the business. Like your job, you could be doing your job great, but the business could be run like crap or whatever, and it goes under. It has nothing to do with the employees. Yeah,
that's true. That's true. But Manli, the thing about if you have been like great at it, right? So the very next day you would be able to push your way through to some other job, and that's the real nature of security that comes from it.
only if the job supply is there. It may not be.
Not in these times.
Because right now there are definitely hundreds of people, at least on all of these remote work or digital nomad places or whatever, eager to work for practically nothing just to sustain their remote life. And everyone that actually has a remote business that at least is sustaining right now is just like smiling that they're not one of those guys.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So that happens a lot. And Manli, thanks for all your tips on how to be more effective while working remote. And this was a really engaging discussion. Loved your insights. Thanks from all the listeners. And we would love to see you again soon. And see you out.
Yep.
Thanks for taking the time. Bye.
Okay. All right. Cheers. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.